So you're interested in becoming a computer programmer. First thing I'd recommend is getting and start doing tutorials. Build a repository on GitHub and use it as if you would have your artist binder or your portfolio as far as like what a model would have. And that's something that you have to pay attention to because unlike other professions, they will examine you in interviews. You can just say, here's my GitHub, and they can see what you can do and examine you based upon that, or examine you and how you would do certain problems based upon what they give you in the interview. There are programs that will help you learn how to code, build your own stuff, and then they have job placement. There's some on YouTube. I would strongly suggest that you do that because it's a lot easier to get a job by word of mouth, or they already know you're coming from this particular area, the school, this kind of area. They know what to expect of the person coming in. The second thing that I'd recommend is when you're in the interview, ask them what you're inheriting when you walk in the door. Is it a complete disaster? Are you doing something legacy? Are you doing something brand new? You have to pay attention to that when you're going into something, because if not, you're going to be stuck with it. Do they like to do things fast and not design stuff properly so the code fails and then you have to go and update stuff later because it wasn't built right to begin with? Does it look really nice? The GUI does look really nice, and then all of a sudden the back end sucks or it doesn't work at all, but it looks really pretty? You have no idea sometimes what you're getting yourself into. So make sure you ask those thought-provoking questions whenever you are doing the interview. The third thing is when you do get the job, find someone smarter than you. If you find someone smarter than you and stay with them, you will learn a lot. And in this job, there are people that know so much information. And even when you think you know it 100%, there are people that design the languages. So there's people smarter than you. And I take it like, for example, poverty and wealth. You have people that are extremely impoverished, regularly impoverished. You have lower middle class, upper middle class, higher middle class. Then you have wealthy. Then you have extremely wealthy. And then you have what's called generational wealth. In my mind, it's broken apart like that as far as knowledge that some programmers have. Some may have 30-40% language down, but the other 60% they don't utilize. And that's another thing that you can get really big into with this is people have a lot of ego when you do computer programming because they think they can do things and they really don't. And that comes along with experience, knowing like, hey, I may not know this. And sometimes you'll get stuff dumped on your plate where you're like, well, I've never seen this before, so I'm going to have to figure it out. And that just happens. Which leads me to my next point, I should say, is if you're going to ask for help from teammates or a lead programmer, make sure you've done all the research. Make sure you've tried every single way you can think of before going to them for help. And the main thing I would start with is a good design. Without a good design from the requirements that you receive, the code, a lot of the times you'll have to figure out what it does, and that's not usually a good thing to do. I would strongly recommend having really good requirements from user stories, then doing a design, then coding, because if you run into problems, you can kind of figure out, okay, this is what needs to be here. But like I said before, you will do research on it, and it will drive you insane as far as, because if you've ever been programming something, it's never something big. It's always something really minuscule, and then once you figure it out, you can't unsee it. It's one of those kind of things, and it's really, really frustrating. So I would strongly recommend, if you are working on something and you can't figure it out, exhaust every option, explain it to the lead or whoever you're working with. Hey, these are all the things that I've tried. This is everything that I've done. Here's my research. This is what's breaking. I cannot figure it out. Go to them. They may be able to help you. They may not. They may know somebody else that can, which is another thing. Realize you are not the smartest person in the room. You're just not. There are those that are extremely way more smart than you, but realize you do bring value to the table, and they were where you were once before you were there. Everyone started from there. So don't feel bad that, oh, I don't know this and that. It's really easy to fall into that. But if you like I said before, if you get under someone's wing and learn from them, especially if you try to get assigned projects, especially stuff you've never done before, try to get assigned to somebody that has done it, because a lot of times you guys will be working together and they will improve your quality of work. They just will, because of their experience and their knowledge in the area. This leads me to number 5. Get to know your team. Figure out who does front end, who does back end. as far as who's really good at what. Are they really good at doing research? Are they really good at doing design? Are they really good at doing peer review? You figure that out amongst the team and kind of spread the wealth if you can, because you'll be assigned different parts of a project, and it's really hard if they have knowledge in certain areas and you get assigned that, and then you can reach out to them sometimes, like I said before, sometimes, and you can say, hey, I'm having an issue with this. They may be able to help you really quick, but if not, you're going to have to wait, or you're just going to have to figure it out until they're done with their project, like they're part of the project before it's peer reviewed, in order for you to get to the point to where you're able to ask them, like, hey, before they get assigned something else, you can bring it up and say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. You could also bring it upon the project manager too, and have a scrum meeting about it, or just talk amongst the developers themselves and say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. Can you guys look at this and see? Because sometimes that can happen, because you do run into that. But like I said, make sure you have everything that you could think of done and the research on it. That way they can say, okay, that way you're not wasting their time. They can clearly see you're not being lazy. You're actually attempting to solve the problem that you're having as far as the code is involved. The next thing that I recommend is be very meticulous on what you do. Make sure that you write comments and things, because you don't want to go back so many months later and then you have to maintain it, and then you don't remember what you did or how it interacts or anything. You want to make sure you write good comments. And the way that I do this is design, and then you write pseudocode above it. And then you write the pseudocode above it, and then you write the actual code underneath the pseudocode. And then you can go back and change the pseudocode later to make it to where it makes sense to you as if you're reading it, instead of having someone that you don't know having to go back in time and try to figure out what you were trying to do. And that person could be you, so just remember that. If you're building a part of a project, make sure you write the comments that are necessary. That way that if someone else or even yourself has to go back and maintain it later, or something breaks, you can at least read what's going on. And the last thing is, do not start building something if you don't know the requirements. Because if you start building something without having all the requirements, and you design it, then you start coding it, and it's not what the person wants, or it doesn't do what the requirements are supposed to do, then you have to restart the entire thing all over again. Make absolutely sure that's what the requirements are. Because if not, like I mentioned before, you're going to have to restart the entire thing over again, and it's extremely annoying. And if you're on a time crunch and they're saying, hey, get this out the door, good luck to you sleeping. Get it out the door and let's go. The next thing that I recommend is, in meetings, if you're doing teams, have one of you get up there, or if you're doing it through Skype, record it if you're allowed to. Get up there, do the project, have the other person take the minutes of what's going on, because any alterations, the peer review given by the other developers, you can take that and then use it in your design. You can take it and use it in your peer review. They could ask you questions, why do you do this? A lot of times, if you throw something up there, it's like a thesis. What they say may not necessarily be right or wrong, or what you say may not be necessarily right or wrong, but you have to defend it. If you can't defend it really well, you can't figure out why you decided to do that, then maybe it's good on you to listen to alternative points of view to maybe it work better for you, and the actual code will be better because of the way you designed it. And the way that the feedback they're giving you, it's a lot easier, because you're thinking, okay, well, maybe I just didn't think of it that way. And then you have to change that based upon that, which is extremely important. And that's the best part about this, is there's such a varying array of different people, as far as all the way from beginners, which I would be considered a junior developer because I've only been doing it for like about a year. And then you have those that are more medium, which I would say 3 to 7 years. And then after that, you have the high-end lead kind of individuals. The next thing that I recommend is figure out what framework you're using, figure out what language you're using, and know the basics of it, know exactly how it works. That's something else I recommend. You can buy books on it. Just realize that when they do updates, like if you go from different versions, it may not be compatible. Figure out NuGet packages later as far as what works, what doesn't work. These are some things that I'd recommend if you're going to enter the software engineering or coding. If you guys have any questions, please leave them down below, and y'all have a nice day.